Alright guys, welcome to a new video where we will talk about how to beat Yubel. This is obviously a bit of an older deck, but this new series just started with the Voiceless Voice deck. And I also wanted to make a Yubel deck because this is something that you see on the ladder quite a lot at the current moment. As you can see here, I have a Yubel list. You can also play this with super polymerizations. You could also play this with the trap in combination with the basic boss monster that can fusion summon with the entire field. But most likely, and especially in higher ranks, you will see this deck without these tags, as they will also disappear in the future when we get additional support. So let's talk about where you can stop this deck. And it needs to be said that this deck is definitely not easy to stop, and it's not that straightforward, not as straightforward at least as with other decks. And this is partly because they can always at any point make a Phantom of Yubel. If you're not aware, this guy can be made with one Yubel monster and one Fiend monster with 0 attack and 0 defense by shuffling these targets basically from anywhere, so from the graveyard or the hand or the field back into the deck. So for example, if your opponent starts with, let's say, a Chaos Summoning Beast with a 0/0 monster, and let's say he also starts with Yubel in his hand, then one of the best things that he can actually do is just shuffle them back, because he can't really use them. They are basically bricks to make a Phantom of Yubel, and this is a monster negate then. So this basically disenables you from interrupting him at any point if you only have one hand trap. This is the first thing. So when it comes to Max C, I would in general always, and I've talked about this in the last video, drop the Max C in the draw phase, especially in the draw phase if you do not have other hand traps. Because if you do not have other hand traps but only Max C, then that means that you won't activate anything in the main phase, and if you then activate your Max C in the draw phase, then you won't activate anything in the main phase, meaning you won't make a triple tactics talents live. Obviously you make a triple tactics thrust live, but you can't really play around that. And it's very nice against Yubel to get the Max C out early, because otherwise, their first action could be to make a Phantom of Yubel. They could also use the Nightmare Throne if they already have their starter and Samsara de Lotus to destroy the Spirit of Yubel, and the Spirit of Yubel in the graveyard would then summon a Yubel, and at that point, once again, they would be able to make a Phantom of Yubel before starting their entire combo, so that can be a bit tricky. But let's talk about this. The main starters of the deck are Samsara de Lotus, the opening of the Spirit Gates, and then probably the Dark Beckoning Beast, and obviously the Nightmare Throne. So Ash Blossom is definitely a good card against this deck. You can decide to Ash the Nightmare Throne, which is, I think, always very good Ash here. Nightmare Throne normally wants to grab the starter and Samsara de Lotus, but as I already pointed out, can sometimes also just destroy a Spirit of Yubel together with Yubel to make a Phantom of Yubel. You can basically, negate both with just Ash Blossoming this. Then again, the best Ash Blossom target by far in this deck would be Samsara de Lotus. You can tribute this card for cost, by the way, which is why Ash Blossom is better on this than like an Infinite Impermanence or an Effect Veiler, because you would need to Effect Veiler and Impermanence this like before, and then the effect would still be activatable, and it's not that hard to get this thing back on the field. You can tribute this card, special summon one Yubel monster from your deck, which basically starts the entire combo. So if you have an Ash, the best thing to use it on is your Samsara de Lotus. If for whatever reason you have information, or your opponent, let's say you are in a continuous turn and you have seen your opponent use a lot of his resources, he maybe have already used, I don't know, 1 or 2 Samsara de Lotus, and you know some of his hands cards, then you could obviously also Ash something like an Opening of the Spirit Gates or a Dark Beckoning Beast. Especially Ashen the Dark Beckoning Beast can be quite nice, because if your opponent gets the Opening of the Spirit Gates, this can also enable him to get from his graveyard level 0 monsters, right? Once per turn you can discard one card, special summon one Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense from a graveyard, which can be the Samsara de Lotus, but can also be like a Spirit of Yubel or Yubel himself, which can then also kill you if Nightmare Pain is on the field. So always keep in mind that the Dark Beckoning Beast getting the Opening of the Spirit Gates is also very good follow-up. If you just Ash a Samsara de Lotus, then there is no follow-up. Basically, the card is in the grave and that's that. But if you let a Dark Beckoning Beast and the Opening of the Spirit Gates get through, then your opponent will have follow-up on the following turn. So it can sometimes make sense in a game state to just Ash the Dark Beckoning Beast. But then again, Samsara de Lotus would be your best target. Let's talk about Infinite Impermanence and Effect Veiler. So we once again will basically talk about them together, because they do the same, obviously, even though it's a bit different in the terms of which phase they are activated in. So the best Infinite Impermanence or Effect Veiler target is either the Spirit of Yubel, because this wants to set the Nightmare Pain, and normally people do not run a lot of Nightmare Pains in their list. I'm running 2, there are also people running only 1, so if you just Effect Veiler or Infinite Impermanence this guy, then it's not that likely that the Nightmare Pain is also in the hand, and this normally stops the combo and he has to go into, I don't know, a Spirit of you, a Phantom of Yubel and pass over to you. Another really good target for Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence is the Dark Beckoning Beast, firstly because then he can't search his Opening of the Spirit Gate, which Opening of the Spirit Gate could then search Chaos Summoning Beast, which then could be normal summoned by the effect of Dark Beckoning Beast, and then he has 2 bodies which he then can go into a Yama with, and then basically end on his Unchained Sword of Rage, which is a strong monster, which is a monster you could also on your turn then use your Infinite Impermanence to negate this, but this doesn't really make sense because most of the lists running the Escape of the Unchained that can just destroy this blue dog and then get it back from the grave with the Unchained Soul Lord of Yama trigger effect when something gets destroyed. So that doesn't really make sense. It makes sense to Infinite Impermanence or Effect Veiler this guy here. So this says when this card is normal summoned, you can add 1 Uria, blah blah blah. So you're basically adding this thing here to your hand. But then again, the second effect is during your main phase, you can normal summon 1 Fiend monster with 0 attack and defense in addition to your normal summon set. So this effect you will also negate, which is very nice. A cool play that Yubel can make, if he can make it, is making a Dark Beckoning Beast, searching the Opening of the Spirit Gates, and then normal summoning a Samsara the Lotus behind this Dark Beckoning Beast, or as I already said, the Chaos Summoning Beast. So if you can negate this here, then the second normal summon isn't possible, and your opponent also won't get the follow-up from the Opening of the Spirit Gates. So if your opponent starts with Dark Beckoning Beast, they either start with the Samsara or the Dark Beckoning Beast or the Nightmare Throne normally, then just go ahead and imperm this thing here. If your opponent starts with the D-Lotus, then you just go ahead and imperm the Spirit of Yubel. Then we can also talk about other hand types. You have talked about Effect Veiler, Infinite Impermanence. Let's talk about Nibiru and whether this card is good. This card can be good depending on which like combo line your Yubel opponent basically uses. So I guess one thing that you have to be aware of, obviously if he has already established a Phantom of Yubel, then he has a negate life, and then your Nibiru is a bit problematic. Then you might need to bait this negate here with something else, maybe an Ash Blossom, and then you can go a Nibiru. You have to keep in mind when it comes to the timing of Nibiru that you want to do it before they make an Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess in their combo. At any time that they have 4 bodies on the field, they would normally be able to make an Appaloosa, so it's always good to be a bit careful at this point. But what normally happens is that in the basic combo you make a Cross Sheep, which can then give you another body with Fusion Summoning the Phantom of Yubel to the Cross Sheep zones, and then you normally make an Unchained Soul Lord of Yama. And these are the 2 bodies that in basically all of the combos are being used to make an Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess afterwards, because both of them are link 1, so you can make an Appaloosa for 2. So if you see these on the field, if these are on the field, if these have resolved their effects, so if the Yama is searched, etc., then it's a good point to use your Nibiru if you can, if there is not a Phantom of Yubel on the field, obviously. But that would be a great point to use it before they make an Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, because otherwise this will just be negated by the Apo, and then it doesn't really make a difference here. Let's talk about some board breakers. Can you use board breakers against this deck? Does that make sense? Let's talk Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched actually is not that great against Yubel because they can just, their normal end board would be consistent. By the way, if you need a combo guide for this deck, the video is in the upper right corner. I have it there. And if you like my videos, please consider subscribing, hitting the thumbs up and the notification bell. This would help out a lot. Thanks. Evenly Matched. Okay, so they normally end up on Unchained Soul of Rage, the Trap, then an Appaloosa, and a Phantom of Yubel, and maybe some other stuff, but this is the basic thing. So if you then go ahead and evenly match, the problem is that they can just activate their Escape of the Unchained. They would then destroy Unchained Soul of Rage. They would keep everything, or they would send away everything but the Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess for 2. And then because this was destroyed, so it's in the graveyard, right? They banish everything. This is in the graveyard because it was destroyed by the trap. And then they just use the trigger effect of the Yama, which is also in the grave, to resummon the Rage. And then basically the field consists of Appaloosa for 2, which was there before, the Unchained Soul of Rage, which was there before, and the Phantom of Yubel is gone. So you basically have removed a Phantom of Yubel and the trap that could pop something. Still leaving your opponent with an Unchained Soul of Rage into SP and an Appaloosa, which is very, very strong. So that's not that great. Same thing, kind of the same thing goes for Dark Duel. Dark Duel is definitely better. Because the same thing is true for Dark Ruler, right? If you Dark Ruler this blue dog here, then he can still go trap, destroy the blue dog and one of your cards, and then just resummon the blue dog and it won't be Dark Rulered anymore. So same thing basically. But then again, you have negated the Appaloosa and the Phantom, so that's also not bad. So Dark Ruler isn't bad, but I think stopping this deck, it's more effective to stop this deck with hand traps than to stop it with board breakers. This is my point. And then we have cards like Forbidden Droplet, which also isn't bad, but suffers from basically the same points. You can Forbidden Droplet the Unchained Soul of Rage, but you will just get it back and destroy it and get the fresh one back. So you can get rid of the Appaloosa negate and also of the Phantom of Yubel, but not really of the Rage, which is why this deck is very resilient against a lot of board breakers. There is no single hand trap or board breaker that you can play that is really like bone breaking against, or back breaking, you should say, even not bone breaking, but back breaking against this deck. So board breakers not the thing that you should go for, in my opinion. We can talk a Draw and Lockbird, which can be quite nice depending on how your opponent starts. If, for example, he starts with Dark Beckoning Beast, searching the opening of the Spirit Gates, and then you go for the Draw and Lockbird. This is quite nice because then they can't, for example, search their Gruesome Gravescammer. Then again, it has to be said that Draw and Lockbird is definitely not that great against this deck because they are not searching that much, and they can also, for example, with the Spirit of Yubel, just set the Nightmare Pain to the field so that they don't need to add it to the hand. So yeah, that doesn't really make any sense. Draw and Lockbird, not something I would use, also because it's not that great in the current meta anyways. We can talk about Bestials because you can see I also have them in here, and obviously because a lot of people are playing Voices Voice right now. Against Voices Voice, Bestials are really great. They're also good against Yubel, and I can't even find them by typing them. Let's type Beist. Okay, there we have them. How good are the Bestials actually against this deck? I think they are honestly okay. They can be quite nice. One good thing that you can Bestial, for example, is the Gruesome Gravescammer. He has another effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon on Fiend with 0 attack and defense. Getting this out of the graveyard is nice. Then again, this only prevents one additional body on the field, which is also not that great. You could also remove Yubels from the graveyard, thereby robbing your opponent of the opportunity to shuffle them back for a Phantom of Yubel. So if, for example, your opponent goes for the Nightmare Throne, destroying the Spirit of Yubel, getting the Yubel onto the field, then you could, for example, remove the Spirit of Yubel with your Bestial. Then again, they would only need a 0 attack, 0 defense monster in their hand to still make a Phantom of Yubel, which is also not that great. And another target that you could aim for is the Soul Lord of Yama, which would then mean that your opponent cannot use the trap on his Soul of Rage, can't bring the Soul of Rage back. And if you then have, for example, an evenly matched, then that would be way better. But all in all, Bestials not that great against Yubel, but they can be used, main targets being either the Yubel stuff in the graveyard or the Gruesome Gravescammer or the Soul Lord of Yama. These are definitely the best targets that you could aim for with the Bestials. We can talk about some other hand traps here, more niche ones that not a lot of people are playing. Ghost Mourner, obviously, kind of the same. We need to use it on special summon, which is why I think this is not that great. You can't Ghost Mourner the Samsara, you can't Ghost Mourner Dark Beckoning Beast. You would then go again, use it on the Spirit of Yubel, like you would an Infinite Impermanence or an Effect Veiler, and then Ghost Ogre, a card that will become very prominent when Tenpai Dragon comes. Ghost Ogre, if you want to destroy something, the best thing that you can destroy is either the Nightmare Throne, getting rid of it and negating the Search, or the Nightmare Pain, in my opinion. You could also go for an opening of the Spirit Gates, but this only if it's like a game state later on. So if your opponent goes for the full combo first turn, then never ever use this on the opening of the Spirit Gate, but use it on the Nightmare Pain. And I think these are the most important ones that we could talk about. Obviously, there are also stuff like Raigeki and Darkwood if you want to play these. They basically amount to the same end board like all the other board breakers do, because it's basically the same thing. You get rid of the Appaloosa, you get rid of the Phantom of Yubel, but the Unchained Soul of Rage will trigger, or will the Yama, I should say, will trigger and just resummon the Unchained Soul of Rage. And then the trap is also still live, but cannot be used, I guess. So every board breaker just lets this guy like stay on the field, which is why board breakers aren't the thing against this deck. You could also use Super Polymerization. Unfortunately, it's not that great in this situation because the Phantom of Yubel, because one thing that you obviously could do, which I was thinking about, is just putting this guy here in the extra deck and then using Super Polies, because this can be made with one Yubel monster plus as many monsters on the field as you want. So in theory, they end with Phantom of Yubel, they end with Appaloosa and with Sword of Rage. In theory, you could just make Super Polymerization into this guy by using the Phantom of Yubel, but unfortunately Phantom of Yubel says cannot be used as fusion material. If this clause wouldn't be on the card, then Super Poly would go very hard against this deck, because this would remove the Appaloosa, the Phantom, and Sword of Rage, and Sword of Rage would not even come back because the armor wouldn't trigger because it wasn't destroyed, it was fused away, right? But unfortunately this doesn't work. You can obviously gamble that your opponent ends up with an Yubel on the end board, which can sometimes be the case. Normally you never ever do this, but it can be the case if they have a really great combo, honestly, then they might have some extra bodies, but this doesn't really make any sense. So Super Poly, unfortunately, not a card that is working against this deck. Guys, this is everything for now. We have talked about all the most important ones. Just note that there is not like a single hand trip that totally kills this deck, but that you basically need to be aware of at which point you need to interrupt your opponent, which is what I just told you. Let me know in the comments if there is something missing. If you have any more questions, just write them in the comments, and we will see each other in the next one.